Welcome to the Institute of All Intelligent Life. I'm Allan Keislar, and today we are continuing our discussion of the extraterrestrial concepts of God and creation. So today we're going to especially explore the concept of God, divinity, deity, Allah. So what these different words mean, because there are different meanings of some of these different concepts. So I'm going to try to clarify how these terms can be used, at least the way I'm going to be using them now. And hopefully we will be able to get some better understanding by exploring these different words and the different meanings that they have. First of all, I will just go back to the idea that I had started out this section of the class with, which was describing three aspects, or four aspects, we might say, of deity or divinity. Namely, first of all, we can use the word God, but that word has many meanings. But by that, in this context, I mean the original source of everything, the original creator. The name Allah refers to that original source of everything, which is only one. But we're talking about different aspects, or different actions, you might say, different developments or different expansions of that one original source of everything. So we specifically talked about the first expansion, or the first aspect, which differentiates that oneness. The word we used especially was intelligent infinity. So the infinity is intelligent, but when we're describing it, it's sort of an artificial construct, you might say, to talk about it in this way, because, as I've said repeatedly, everything in this divinity always exists. So it's sort of an abstraction when we talk about the oneness existing in itself, aware of itself, its consciousness or awareness directed inwardly, and that's the one description about the original source of everything. But that oneness is also aware of multiplicity, is aware of manyness. So that's a different aspect of the oneness, which expresses its free will. That is, the one original source of everything becomes aware of its freedom to act and experience otherness or manyness. So that is the second aspect of divinity that we're describing here. And the third is what we describe using the word love with a capital L, logos with a capital L, the infinite energy. And before I go on, I just want to share with you a letter that I received from one of our listeners. And he is talking about the lecture a week ago. And he says, I was listening to your last lecture in which you speak about co-creators. Actually, I was amazed at how this extraterrestrial concept of God relates with the Quran. When I looked into the Quran, all divinity phases you told are actually there in the Quran also. The first and second phase, everyone knows it's there, he says. About that third divinity phase, which you described as energy, love, light, and logos, now, sir, look what I have found from the Quran related to this third phase. The following are the verses of the Quran. I have created everything with love. So love is, in that sense, the aspect or agency of the divinity of God, the original source, involved in creation. So that's a verse from the Quran. I have created everything with love, with a capital L. And then another, Allah is the light of heaven and earth. So again, this is another aspect or feature or development of Allah, that is, as the light. And then this listener, his name actually is Allan Khizr, he has then quoted another verse from the Quran, when I decide to create, I just say be and it is. So he considers this to be talking about a logos. And he goes on to say, and at many places in the Quran, Allah says that He is the source of all energy and He is the ultimate energy who is providing everything. So that's this, he's equating that with this third aspect of the Godhead, infinite energy, love, logos. And he goes on to say, sir, here I think Quran is actually supporting all this. What do you think about this? I want to know your opinion. So I wrote him back, yes, I think you're bringing out a very important aspect of this discussion, that there is one God, one Allah, the source of everything, but has different, he used the word, these different aspects of divinity, or different phases rather, of divinity. So, and he asks one more question, and I have another question about co-creators. According to the Quran, there are infinite angels, which are very mighty angels, and also pious souls and prophets who are regulating and running different systems to support life in all universes, according to the command of Allah. So can we say that these co-creators are angels or prophets of Allah? For example, he gives the angel Michael, or the archangel Michael, and he asks about this idea. So I just will answer yes, that the co-creators that we're describing as in the beginning of the fourth phase is all of creation, but the co-creators are the ones who introduce the creation of the universes, the material universes. So I would say yes, we can call them archangels. Somebody else asked a similar question in the last class, which I also answered in the affirmative, that yes, we can call the co-creators angels, although I explained there that there are other angels who are not co-creators. For example, the bright and morning star, as that individual is called in the Urantia book, the first created being within our universe, that being is also an angel, an archangel. In fact, that being is identified as Gabriel, the archangel Gabriel. And the archangel Michael is also identified with the co-creator. So this word angel, or archangel specifically, can be used for the co-creators and for these other great personalities, the original personalities of our universe. So this is a very, very interesting, helpful letter. I want to thank Allan Khizr for, I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but that is a very wonderful letter. So thank you very much, Sir Allan Khizr, for writing that, and I hope you can all appreciate that also. So what I'm going to move into now, I described this briefly in the previous classes, that there is the material world, which has millions, billions of universes. We really can't count them ourselves, but they're more than we can imagine. And what I understand is there are also more universes that can be and are coming into existence, so it's best for us just to think about them as infinite. But that's one aspect of reality, which is the evolutionary universes, the universes which are created in a certain point in time, or again, time can mean different things, but these universes are not eternally perfect. They are material, is the word I'm using to describe them, and they are evolutionary in the sense that they develop. They're not created perfect. And this is an aspect of divinity too. That is, not only are these material universes evolving, but God, in relationship with the universes, evolves. So that may be a astounding or shocking concept, perhaps, because we think about God as static and perfect. But that is the original Godhead, the original Allah, or the universal creator, the original, not the creator of the material universe, but the creator of all existence, is, yes, static and perfect and complete from the beginning and end, but an aspect or a phase of that divinity in relationship with the evolutionary universes is also evolving. So these are some concepts that we have to maybe open our minds to meditate on, to think about, to accept. But that's a little bit I'm just talking about. This material world is full of uncountable universes, each having, as I've said before, a co-creator, one being who is the original engineer, we might say, the original source of the existence or the particulars of that universe. The natural laws of each universe are decided upon and created by that co-creator, who is, of course, not the original creator, but is for all practical purposes, that being is the God of that universe, because that being is the source of that universe. And I described two beings who exist along with that co-creator in each universe, who come with him, we could say. That is one who is his closest friend and advisor, you might say, and in one sense is almost superior to him, because he comes along with him from the spiritual world, and he doesn't get directly involved in the creation of the universe, but he sort of sits back and advises. So that being is one of the two beings that comes with the Creator's Son, or the co-creator. And the second personality is a spirit who comes into personal being in order to participate in the universal creation. And that being I described as the intimate consort or partner of the co-creator. And that being is usually described in feminine terms. The co-creator is usually described using masculine terms, and this universal spirit is usually described as, if the co-creator is called the Son, as is sometimes used. The Bible, for example, talks about the Son. This co-creator's intimate partner is usually described as a daughter or mother of the universe, a daughter of the original Godhead. So I want to just step back once more and repeat the point that I've made repeatedly. There is one original God only, and that is a very, very important point. We have to remember that unity of that one source of everything. But when we begin describing the details about the process of creation, when we begin going into the details about the existence of the spiritual world also, as we're going to do in just a minute, we see that there are many personalities, and they are so far superior to us that practically for us they're like divinities. That is, they are creators, co-creators of the universe. All right, so that was a little bit of review of the concepts that we have covered so far. Now I want to go into something that I've only briefly mentioned in the past two classes, and that is details about the spiritual world. And again, I'm repeating, these ideas are something that have not been talked about very much previously, meaning in previous revelations, in previous religions, these ideas were hinted at, or they were talked about briefly, but to go into details, they often were not described in detail. So that's why these extraterrestrial sources are very helpful to us, because this knowledge was not revealed on our planet before, but it has been known and revealed elsewhere. So this knowledge is now coming to us on this planet, and we're very, very fortunate to be able to take advantage of it. All right, so the first point, I did briefly touch on this in the last two classes, but the spiritual world is also actually much larger than the material world. It also consists of many, many, again, sometimes a number is given, but for me that number is meaningless, because there are spiritual universes also, many, many spiritual universes. Those universes are all eternal. They never were created. They all were perfect from the beginning. They don't evolve as the material universes. And I mentioned they are all headed by an individual ruler, who I said we don't call the creator because those universes, those spiritual universes, were never created. They always existed from the beginning. But each one of them has a supernal personality, a great personality whom for us we can only describe as a divinity because they are eternal and they are what we would call, from our perspective, they are all-knowing, they're pervading, they're not limited like we are. So we created beings are limited. Those beings who are the rulers, it's one word to use, the heads of those spiritual universes, they are not limited like we are limited. They know everything. They have no limitations on their knowledge. Well, maybe we can say in some sense maybe they do, but we can't really understand if they do or not. From our perspective, they are omniscient. So those personalities are the rulers of those vast spiritual universes. Now, some people may ask, how do I know this? There are various sources. This is mentioned in the Urantia book, which I quoted extensively. I used extensively in the last class, but I also had a personal experience of that. And this is what I'm going to describe to you now. I need to give you a little background first. I need to talk about Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe was a very, very amazing person. He was an American businessman who was active in the second half of the 20th century. He was active even from the 1950s. In 1960s he became quite popular, and he passed away in the 1990s. So Robert Monroe was a very interesting person. He began experiencing spontaneously that he was traveling outside of his body. This may sound strange to you, but he explained this is what we all do when we go to sleep at night. We dream. We actually go out of our bodies. At least often when we sleep and dream at night, we are literally translated from this body to another dimension or realm of existence. And our dreams are not false. Our dreams are real, but they're in another dimension of reality. So Robert Monroe had the interesting experience that he began traveling out of his body when he was awake. And he began both traveling in this dimension and in those other dimensions. And he cataloged his experiences. He was a scientist, actually. He was an engineer. And when these things started happening to him at first, he thought he was going crazy because he had no understanding of what was happening to him when he began traveling out of his body, looking down on his body from up near the ceiling, and then going outside of his room, outside of his house, traveling to other places. And he thought he was going crazy. So he began going to doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists to help him get cured of this apparent disease. And it took quite a long time because different psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors couldn't find anything wrong with him medically, but they couldn't explain what was happening to him. Until finally, he met one psychologist who said, don't worry about it. This is something that yogis and Sufis and other spiritual personalities do this. It's not something, it's not a sickness. You're not sick because you're doing this. It's actually something that spiritually advanced people do on a regular basis, and it's not something strange or weird or crazy. So Robert Monroe was very happy to hear that, and then, because this had been happening to him spontaneously, not under his control, he was going out of his body, traveling here and there, and then he developed gradually the ability to do it at will. That is, he gradually learned how he could go out of his body when he wanted to and come back to his body. And he described many, many experiences. He wrote 3 books. The first one was Journeys Out of the Body. And he became, in the 1960s and 1970s, he became the leading teacher of out-of-body travel. So if you're interested in that, he was a scientist. He was not a religious man. And he wrote about his experiences in a very scientific way. but it was very interesting to me when I first read his books. And then I went to he started an organization called the Monroe Institute, and it still exists after his passing away. Other people have taken up the leadership, and it's continuing the Institute programs that he had started. And I went to one of them in 2004. It was like a week-long gateway experience, is what the Monroe Institute calls it. So you can look at their website, www.monroeinstitute.org. So they have these regular programs. Gateway Experience is one of them. There are other programs also they have that are sometimes a week long, sometimes shorter or longer. But that experience I went to, it was basically to teach people how to travel out of their bodies. That was one of the ideas behind it. So in this, we learned, using the technology that Robert Monroe started and patented actually, called HemiSync, which, just a slight side note here, our brain is divided into two hemispheres, and they usually act independently of each other. But he developed a method by which to get the two hemispheres to coordinate with each other. And that was involving binaural beats, that is, sound coming in the two ears separately. And anyway, it's a little complicated. I'm not going to go into all of it now, but you can read about it on the Monroe Institute website, and in which it's just a way to get the two hemispheres of the brain to work together instead of separately. And Robert Monroe found, when he developed this technology, that people could reach deeper states of consciousness much more easily, meditative states. And many great meditators who went through that said, wow, this is a way that people can reach deeper states of meditation very quickly that may take months or years for a meditator to develop. It can be done, within a few days even one can develop that ability. So Robert Monroe developed that, and his Monroe Institute utilizes that technology. So I went to one of these programs in the year 2004. That's 13 years ago now. And it was very, very interesting because I experienced traveling out of my body, just as was the purpose of that program. And I realized I'd been doing it before without really understanding exactly what I was doing. I had had some experiences. I mentioned how Robert Monroe found himself sometimes up near the ceiling looking down at his body. That happened to me once when I was awake, and I found myself up looking down at my body down below. So I had had this sort of experience before. But what was very interesting to me was that when I was doing some of this out-of-body travel in other dimensions, other people who were attending, there were about 24 people, I think was the maximum they had in these gateway experiences. So other people also had similar experiences of traveling out of their body. Some people didn't. Many people didn't experience what they were hoping for, but many people did. And one of the experiences I had was very interesting, meeting Robert Monroe. So this was 2004. He had passed away 10 years earlier or so. But the people who were facilitating, who were leading that week-long session, were close friends of his. They had known him and very well. So when I described my meetings with Robert Monroe in meditation, they inevitably said, every time I described, they said, that's Bob. That's what they called Robert Monroe, Bob. They said, whatever I experienced meeting with him, the way he talked, the things he did, they said, that's Bob. That's exactly how he was. And I won't go into the other stories about when I met him and the things he said then, but I will just describe this one meeting that I had with him. And in his third book, I think it was in his third book, Robert Monroe describes how when he was doing this journeying into other dimensions and out-of-body travel, he came upon a place that he could not go beyond. It was sort of like a barrier or a wall, and he said he could not get over it, he could not get under it, he could not go one side or the other, he couldn't get through it. He knew there was something on the other side, but he couldn't go there, and he was very frustrated actually. by that. And he describes this in his third book. So when I met him during one of these out-of-body travels into another dimension, we discussed this place that he had been to, because he wrote in his book how he always wanted to get beyond that barrier, and he never could. So I told him, you can go beyond that barrier, but you have to be willing to give up all of your knowledge. That's the way I worded it to him. So he was a little hesitant. He was a scientist. He didn't want to give up his knowledge. So I said, well, you've written and you've been very, very eager to be able to get beyond that barrier. So if you really want to do it, you're going to have to be willing to give up your knowledge. And he wasn't willing to do it. I said, I told him, you're being a fool. You're not accepting the condition that you need to get to that place where you've always wanted to go. So then I told him, look, okay, if you're not willing to give up your knowledge, just make it as a theoretical or an experimental, because he was a scientist. So I said, do an experiment. Just experiment giving up your knowledge. Experiment setting aside everything that you believed and everything that you've known and everything you've experienced. And are you willing to do that? So then he said, yes. He said, okay, I'll do this as an experiment. So this barrier that we came to then, the way I saw it, the way I experienced it, was just like there were thousands or millions of sharp sabers, swords or huge knives, cutting each and every way all the time. So, there was like no way you could go through it. But somehow I was confident, because I believed that I'd been through that before, so I was confident that I could do it. So I told him, okay, just imagine that you're giving up all of your ideas, all of your so-called knowledge, and just take my hand and come with me. So he agreed to do that. I took his hand, and we somehow, without any sort of baggage of material knowledge, scientific ideas, we were able to pass through that barrier. He was able to pass through it. And when we went through that barrier, we saw very, very clearly what I believe are those spiritual universes. And there were unlimited number of them. There were lots of them, and they were all infinite. That's the way they appeared to be. It's hard to describe this from our perspective, because something infinite would pervade all space. You wouldn't be able to see around it. You wouldn't be able to see more than one infinite universe at the same time. But Robert Monroe and I both could see them, and they were all shining, bright, shining, I don't know how to describe them, worlds, universes, realms. And he immediately, as soon as he saw them, he said, wow, thank you. This is what I've been wanting to see. This is what I knew there was something here. And I said, okay, well, you can see all of these universes here, but I want to take you to the source of those universes, not the universes themselves. But he wasn't interested. He wanted to go immediately and explore the closest one of those universes. He just took off. He said, bye, thanks. And he took off immediately for that. So in these Monroe Institute programs, these meditation sessions, using that Hemisync technology, we're wearing earplugs, earphones, and they were connected to the facilitators of the conference, to the leaders, because at a certain time, after going through this binaural beats coming separately in each ear method of meditation, then when they had finished that session, they would say, okay, now come back. So that happened at that point. After Robert Monroe had left, exactly at that time I heard, okay, come back now. So I had to return, come out of the meditation, and then we had a meeting. All the different people who had gone separately to their separate rooms to hear the meditation session, we all gathered together in a large room, and like I said, there were 20-some, plus a couple of the leaders, the facilitators, and then they asked everybody to describe their experiences. And when I told them what had happened, how I had met Robert Monroe, what he said, how he first refused to go if he had to give up his knowledge, and then when we went through that barrier and we saw those brilliant, shining universes spiritual universes, he wouldn't wait. He wouldn't listen to what I was saying. He just immediately wanted to take off. So he said, "Bye, thanks," and he took off. So when they heard, there were two facilitators. When they heard this, they both immediately said, "That's Bob." So I was confident by this and other experiences when I met him, and they described like that, "That's Bob. That's exactly what he would have done. That's exactly what he was like." I was convinced, yes, I had no doubt, that this was a real experience. I really did meet Robert Monroe, although he had passed away more than 10 years earlier, or about 10 years earlier. I had really met him in this other dimension. So the reason I told this story is because I was answering my question, how do I know this description, which is in the Urantia book, and it's in other extraterrestrial sources also, that there is a different world which is full of light. This world that we live in is dark by nature. We have to have sun, moon, stars, electricity, lights, fire. We have to have some source of light because it's by nature dark, whereas that world is by nature light. Everything there is glowing. Everything is light. There's no need of any separate source of light. So that's one feature. And as I described a little earlier, today as well as in previous classes, it's eternal. All of those spiritual universes are eternal. They never started, they'll never end. And they're always perfect. They always were perfect. They don't evolve into a higher stage of perfection because they're all eternally perfect. They're 100% perfect from the beginning. But, and this is what's very, very interesting, they can, and even the divinity, the deity, or aspects of the divinity, I should say, phases of the divinity, phases of Allah, phases of God, can, in interaction with the evolutionary worlds, the developing worlds, the perfecting worlds, in that relationship, they can all become increasingly perfect, more and more perfect. So this is a fascinating aspect of spiritual reality, which is a little different than the way I was taught, at least. I thought spiritual perfection means it's always perfect and can't become more perfect. But in relationship with the material world, in relationship with the evolutionary universes, the spiritual universes and the spiritual personalities who are perfect, which are perfect, can become more and more perfect. That's kind of a contradiction from our perspective, but that's the way it's explained, and that's the way I understood it when I went there. All right, so this is quite a lot, and there's a lot more. Somebody, one of the listeners mentioned that her notebook is getting full. I said, well, there's a lot more coming. Buy another notebook if you're taking notes here, because this is just the beginning. There's so much information available from extraterrestrial sources, both about this world and I think I'm getting. So forgive me for that little interruption there. That was I think you know that I teach, but I teach on a substitute basis, temporary substitute basis, so I just got a call to come in tomorrow to teach also, so I thought it was important to take it, so please forgive me. All right, so I'm getting more interruptions here. All right, so let's go to your questions and comments, because this is a fascinating subject. I'm sure you're going to have some questions about it. So let me go see what your questions or comments may be. All right. Let's see, so there are hellos, and Amir Azimi says, the source of information is Allah. That's correct. The source of all true information is Allah. Of course, there are ways to twist and turn that information, that is, we can say satanic. That's not directly from Allah, that's indirectly, everything is from Allah, but yes, the source of all information, definitely all true information, comes directly from Allah, or through His different aspects or phases or angels. Yes, right. Ali Galani says, thank you, Khizar. Yes, thank you very much. That was a wonderful letter. Okay. Andrea Green says, omnipresence. Yes, omnipresence is an aspect of the original source, although it or he or she or they. We don't really have the right words, but the original source of everything is present everywhere. Sometimes we think of God as in heaven or somewhere else or in the spiritual world, but actually, as is explained in many different sources, both scriptural sources and extraterrestrial sources, that original source of everything also exists present everywhere, in our hearts, for example. So omnipresence is, yes, a feature of Allah, is a feature of the original source, and thank you very much for that comment. Sometimes we think, we make a mistake and we think about God as somewhere in heaven, but God, as Jesus said also, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So God is within our hearts, also God is present everywhere. It's like a hologram. A hologram exists in a complete form, but also exists within every minute atom of that reality. That's what holographic reality is like. So God is like that. The original Godhead is also present everywhere, completely. Everything is within God, and God is present everywhere, within everything. So, thank you very much. This is the real meaning of omnipresence. Okay, let's see. Tahir Sarasara says, "But sir, the spirit which is actual human and lives in our heart is also unlimited, and it also from spiritual world," is the question. Yes, in one sense. I would say yes in one sense. It's not unlimited in the same way that God is unlimited, but it is unlimited in the sense that as we develop spiritually, our knowledge goes on increasing more and more unlimitedly. So in that sense, we're unlimited. We're also unlimited in the sense that as we develop more and more, we can go anywhere. So we're, in one sense, omnipresent, not in the sense that God is simultaneously everywhere, but in the sense that we can go anywhere. So in that sense also we're unlimited. And the actual human, I think you're talking about the spirit. There is one aspect of our spirit. This is a whole other discussion that's very, very interesting. The different aspects of, we were talking about the aspects of God. We also have aspects of ourselves. Our soul, or our spirit, also has different aspects. So we will be talking about that more later, but not now. Not now. At this time we're talking about the original spirit, the original source of everything. Okay, let's see other questions about this. Joseph Sadik says, "I experienced this phenomena when I was a kid." Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad that other people are also sharing. This out-of-body, I think is what you're talking about, this out-of-body travel. Many people experience it when they were children especially. In fact, just on Monday, this is Wednesday evening here in America, this is Thursday evening here in America. So on Monday evening, just 4 days ago at this time, my good wife and I were in Berkeley. We had gone to Berkeley, and we listened to a lady speak there who was also describing how she, when she was 2 or 3 years old, when she was a little child, she was very attached to her father. She said when she was still in a crib, she experienced going out of her body and following her father to work. Her father would leave and go to work, and she didn't want him to leave her, so she actually went with him to work. Her body stayed inside the crib, but she went outside. So yes, Joseph Sadik also is describing how he had this experience, this phenomena, when he was a child. So many people actually have it, and often because of our societies, which teach us it's not really possible to do that, we then forget. We don't do it anymore. But some people do. And it's possible for everyone to do it. We do have that experience of doing it in our dreams, but then we think, oh, that's not real. So thank you, Joseph, for sharing that you also experienced that. Khaja Farid Hussein says everything is possible in this world. Yes, there are a lot of things possible that we don't usually think about, just like there's a famous quote from Shakespeare, that there are more things in heaven and earth, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy, O Horatio. That's Hamlet saying it to his friend Horatio. There are more things he was talking about ghosts and spirits, and but there are different dimensions, and it's possible to go out of our bodies, which we usually don't think of in modern Western education, at least. We're not taught about these things. In fact, we're taught that that's crazy or that's impossible. That's why Robert Monroe thought he was crazy at first. But yes, they are possible. So thank you very much, Khaja Farid Hussein, for that wonderful comment. Okay, I'm going to look just for comments. I will contact you if you're asking me to, but Birbulal, congratulations. But I'm going to just talk about the questions that relate to this class now. Khaja Farid Hussein, programs makes more programs. Yes, exactly. This is a very good way of describing it. That and our computer technology is really helping us get a larger understanding of reality, because reality is a lot like computer-generated virtual realities. And as you've just described, programs make more programs. Artificial intelligence, which we described some time ago, which can be very dangerous because it can get out of control. The creators can lose control of it. Those programs, those artificial intelligence programs, can then start making more programs. So I don't remember the name now. One of my listeners commented, I do remember, it was Kazim, my nephew. He said something about artificial intelligence can get out of control of its human creators, but the co-creators won't get out of control of the supreme creator. Yes, they won't. And I replied to him that they have free will. They can go against the original creator, but they never have, and I'm sure they never will. So throughout experience of unlimited time and unlimited numbers of co-creators, none of them has ever done that. But the programs that we create, because we're imperfect, so the artificial intelligence programs we create are imperfect, and they can and do sometimes turn against us, and it can become very dangerous. It has happened. Algorithms, M.A. Salim Kamal Siddiqui says, yeah, that's another way to describe it, algorithms. Okay, so we're going on. Okay, Tahir Sarah says, Sir, what is your view about heaven and hell? Did you see them? I would say yes. I hope that isn't too shocking, but I've had experiences in my out-of-body travel, in dreams, and in waking experiences also, of going to places that were very hellish. The one experience I had was where I went to this place. It was dark. I had the idea that hell is, fire with lots of flames and lights, but it was dark, it was damp, and people seemed to be, the only way I can describe it, they seemed to be like sinking in quicksand, in a sort of swampy place. And it was very difficult to talk to them. They were afraid, and I tried to approach them to try to help them, and they were afraid. They didn't want to talk to me, but it was with great difficulty that some of them I was able to convince to trust me enough to listen to what I was saying to them. It was a very, very hellish. And other parts of that region was like burning flames. They were obviously burning in their regrets and their anxieties. So I think that what I experienced, and that was a place that's described as hell. And similarly, I have been to places that were very, very heavenly, very beautiful gardens, and where everyone was very loving and happy and joking even. So yes, I have no doubt that heaven and hell are real places. In one sense, they're not real, because in one sense, this whole universe, this whole material existence is an illusion of sorts. It's like a virtual reality. But heaven and hell are just as real as this earth is. I have no doubt about that, yes. So Asad Asif, not everything is possible in this world. We cannot go anywhere we want. What do you think, sir? At this time, we can't. But as we develop abilities, some may say spiritual abilities or psychic abilities, we can learn to go anywhere. We can leave our bodies, and of course we have to be qualified to go there. Just like Robert Monroe was able to go anywhere in this universe. That's my understanding. He was able, and he describes in his books how he traveled all these amazing places that are very, very different. And he was able to travel in time also, go to the past, go to the future. So it is possible. Even people that aren't spiritual at all, but have developed technologies, just like I've talked about time travelers. Um, and right now his name is slipping my mind, it'll come to me. But there are CIA experimental programs, not experimental anymore, in which they have done time traveling just by material technology without spiritual qualification. One can travel to other places. But it appears that to go to beyond that barrier that Robert Monroe faced, which I believe it was the barrier or the limit or the border of the material world. But beyond that, even it's possible to go, but that's much more difficult. One has to be willing to give up all of one's experience and knowledge and concepts that one has. So that was, I believe it is possible for us to go anywhere, but only after we develop those abilities. Again, I said, yes, most things, if not, not everything is possible. I will agree, not everything is possible. I do believe it's possible for us to go almost anywhere. There may be places that we're not qualified to go to, but we certainly can go many, many places throughout this universe and even in the spiritual universes. But there, yes, I agree, there are some things, who knows? With God, in the Bible it says, with God all things are possible. So if Allah wants, He can enable us to do anything. But I would agree with you that there may be things that are not possible for us to do. Okay. Birbulal is referring to another book called Easy Journey to Other Planets. Yes, there is a wonderful book, and in fact it's available in Urdu also. I'm trying to remember the Urdu name of it. But anyway, there is this book by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Easy Journey to Other Planets, in which he describes that it's easy to learn how to go to other planets by the same sort of methods that Robert Monroe was describing, of learning to travel out of your body. So yes, it is possible to travel to other planets. Muhammad Raza, when you talk in Urdu, you are looking nice and great. I like your Urdu. तो मुझे माफ़ करना, ये क्लास अभी अंग्रेज़ी में है, मैं उर्दू में बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ. But I will talk in Urdu more in the future. Pirbulal is asking, can we go to the highest heaven or Vaikuntha also, or we can't go beyond Brahmalok? Very good question. And Brahmalok, as I understand it, is described in the Urantia book also as the original, they use the word architectural planets, meaning they were not evolved like our planet, but they were created complete in the beginning. And Brahmalok is that first original architectural planet of our universe, where our co-creator, the archangel Michael, we can call him, our co-creator of our universe, stays. That's his original planet. And so Pirbulal's question is, can we go beyond that? I believe we can. I believe I did when I took Robert Monroe through that barrier. And those planets, or those heavens, those realms that we saw, glowing, unlimited realms, those were the Vaikuntha. I believe those were what are called in the Sanskrit texts the Vaikuntha lokas, or the spiritual heavens. All right, a lot of good questions here. Faizan Khan, lifetime is not a joke. It's for exam for every soul. Islam gives us complete meaning of living life. Yes, I agree. This is definitely true. This life is an exam, and death is the final exam, how we've done in this life. And depending on how we've lived, if we've lived a good life, then we will go to a higher reality, a heavenly reality. And if we live a selfish life, then we will live in a hellish existence afterwards. We will be regretful and anxiety and fearful. So, yes, I agree with that statement. And Islam certainly, that's actually what Islam means. Islam doesn't mean only the religion taught by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Islam means the eternal religion taught by Abraham, by Moses, by all great prophets, and it gives the complete meaning of life, no doubt. Again, another question from Tahira Sarah. Sir, as a beginning student of this spiritual journey, which meditations you will suggest? I have been asked this question many times, and I always give the same answer: chant the names of God. That's the system that I've used for my entire life. I'm 70 years old now, and since my teenage years and my early 20s, I started practicing for many hours every day, actually, reciting names of God. So any names of God, Allah or Jehovah, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison is a common Christian prayer, names of God. There are names of God in all traditions. Om, Ek Omkar, Satnam is the Sikh. Buddhang Sharanam Gacchami in Buddhist religion, which is sometimes considered atheistic, but that name is like a holy name. Taoist tradition, Tao, Ka Tao, Fei Chang Tao, Ming Ka Ming, Fei Chang Ming. The Tao is the original name of the supreme source, Allah. So Tao is also a name, so one can chant that. So any names of God, but that's the best way to meditate, is by repeating and meditate. There are other forms of meditation also, silent meditation, which is just breathing and listening to or meditating on your breath. That's also a very good way to meditate. But my personal experience has been the way I've always found easiest, at least, and I prefer, is zikr. That is chanting the name of Allah, or the name of Ram, or the name of Tao, or the name of, and I use them all myself. Okay, Mohammed Raza, मुझे आपकी उर्दू क्लास का इंतज़ार कर रहे हैं शिद्दत से. ठीक है, मैं फिर एक उर्दू क्लास करूँगा. अभी मैं ये अंग्रेज़ी क्लास कर रहा हूँ, तो ठीक है, शुक्रिया. आपने दरख्वास्त की थी तो मैं करूँगा. अभी मालूम नहीं कब, लेकिन मैं करूँगा कोई लाइव चैट्स उर्दू में. Faizan Khan, time travel, do not use this body. If we lived life so perfect as Islam says us, so Allah will give us the quality of a wall and Shaheed can act after his death, as he can goes back in time using black holes. Yes, usually time travel is not in this body. Very true. Andrew Bashago, whose name I had forgotten before, Andy Bashago, who was the first American child in those secret CIA programs to do time travel. He traveled, as I've said several times before, and you can research this yourself and see the pictures, the photographs actually, that had been taken when Andrew Bashago traveled from, I believe, about 1971 or 72 back to 1863, when President of the United States Abraham Lincoln gave a famous talk called the Gettysburg Address. So they chose that time frame for him to go back in, and it just happened, because they had early photography then, it just happened that somebody took a picture, and Andrew Bashago just happened to be standing in that picture, so you can actually see this young American boy, I think he was about 11 years old then, from the 20th century back in the 19th century, 1863. So he was evidently in the same body. So time travel can be in this body, but I believe it usually is not. Whenever I've done that sort of traveling, it's always been not in this body. But it is possible to travel in time in this body also. So let's see. All right, I think the rest of what you say I agree with here. Faizan Khan, thank you, sir. You're very welcome. Rafia Latif, please guide how we can meet or interact with extraterrestrials. I've been asked this many times, and my answer always is, you can want to meet them, you can pray, you can have that desire, and they may come to you in a dream first. In fact, that's what they've said, that we usually will come to people in dreams to get them ready for that sort of meeting. But I will say also that Stephen Greer, Stevengreer, you can do a search for him on the internet. He has a program specifically meant for training people to meet extraterrestrials. And they have done this often in many parts of the world. They call them ambassadors. I think it's called the Ambassador Program, meaning ambassadors, training ambassadors to be the representatives of our planet with people from other planets who are coming here. So that Ambassador Program of Stephen Greer. It's also called the Disclosure Project, disclosureproject.org, www.disclosureproject.org. You can go to that website also and learn about this ambassador program where they actually train people how to meet extraterrestrials. I've never done that very much, but they'll meet you when you're ready, when you need their help, they will meet you. That's at least what we've been told. I think our time is about up. There are more questions, so okay. I'm just going to look at these questions. I think though I'll end the class now, and I will answer those questions either in the next class or afterwards, because as you know, when I was giving this class, I got interrupted by a phone call from the principal of one of this local schools here who's asked me to teach tomorrow. So I think it's better if I end the class now so I can get a good rest. And I look forward very much to continuing this class. And these are very, very deep ideas. Some of them are astounding, shocking. They were to me when I first heard about them. But I hope you will be patient and listen, and you can. I will give those websites that I mentioned. Andrew Bashago's website I will also put up, and Stephen Greer's website. So you can do more research yourself on time travel and on meeting extraterrestrials. All right, thank you very much. Peace be with you. I look forward to seeing you. Today is Thursday here in America. On Monday, that's 4 days from now. Today's Friday morning in Pakistan. Juma Mubarak, everybody there. And our next class will be Tuesday morning, Pakistan time, at 7 o'clock. Okay. Oh, I just saw one comment. I wish you could have a session on Saturday mornings, as they don't have time to leave for work. Okay, I'll do that. In fact, somebody else has asked for an Urdu class, so I will start doing an Urdu class on Saturday mornings, and sometimes I'm free, sometimes I'm not free Friday evening, but I think tomorrow evening I'm free. I would have to check my time. Let me just think a second. Do I have any? I'm going to go look at my calendar, and then we'll just schedule this right now for tomorrow, so all of you, if you want to attend. Let me just see if I have any program. Friday evening. I have a program at 10 p.m., so that's 10 a.m., so I'll do it before that. We will do it at 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. Pakistan time, Saturday morning, that's Friday evening, 9 p.m. California time, and that will be in Urdu. ठीक है, तो एक उर्दू क्लास शनिचर सुबह सुबह नहीं 9 बजे, और यहाँ कैलिफोर्निया में 9 बजे शाम, जुमा कल शाम को, और पाकिस्तान में शनिचर 9 बजे सुबह. Okay. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.